Good evening, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I'm going to do another video in regards to trusts. We're going to give people a few minutes to get on here. But if you watched a couple of my past videos here, it's been about trusts. First, we discussed the development of a trust, what it takes to build a trust, and how to, what the details of the trust are. You've got to have the intent to create a trust. You've got to have the parties named. You have to have an intent and purpose. Those parties have to be a trustee, a trustor, and a beneficiary, things like that. Then we talked about the ecclesiastical trust in the next one, and that's just a basic, simple trust you make yourself with basically me, myself, and I. You're going to have yourself as the man, and you're going to have persons that you're going to create. Basically, that's your birthright trust. That's just your word against everybody else. It's a private document. You record that by having witnesses to the document, making a document in regards to that witness, and recording that. It's proof of a document, proof of a common law trust. And then, of course, we talked about the ecclesiastical trust, which is the common law trust, and that's again, that body of the trust is going to be the spiritual connection, your family registry, a baptismal record, something like that. And then we talked about, or now we're going to talk about private trusts. And this is the one that's going to have your substance. This is the one that's going to back everything up with a surety. It's going to have the actual value according to what our modern laws run by in regards to coming with clean hands in these courts of equity, these commercial courts. Everything's commercial court, and they consider clean hands as having something of substantive value to come with to indemnify anybody you might make a claim against if you happen to harm or injure them. And that's the important part that the common law doesn't involve, because that's based on criminal actions. Well, now we've got a separation of criminal actions and commercial actions that can have criminal effects. So when we talk about our private trust, we have our trustor, our trustee that owns the property, that has possession of the property, and then distributes it for the use of the beneficiaries, or its interest in use, or its profit, whatever. This is where you establish your businesses, or your main business. This is where I would highly consider establishing your bank. It's the one that's going to have possession of the substantive value and can operate as a trust company, and thereby not only being allowed to create the trust instruments such as certificates of indebtedness, bills of exchange, or promissory notes, things like that, but it's also going to be allowed to transfer any property or interests in that property. So that's going to be in your private trust. Again, it's for your commercial purposes, but it's a private trust, and therefore you're still not contracted with any kind of commercial entity. And that's an important thing to remember, is that all trusts concern contracts. It's a three-party contract situation. It's just a different kind of contract. So then we know that we've got the intent to create a trust, and we know that the trustor is the guy who actually physically possesses the gold, and that's going to be transferred by all practical principles, to a person known as trustee. It's going to be done through a personal transfer as a commercial activity if it needs to be transferred in some sort of equitable form. Say you use it as surety for a contract, and that contract is breached by yourself, and the other party takes you to court, and the court assesses loss, and you have to recoup that loss. You have that substantive value, and it's got support of what's known as like a silver surety certificate, certificate of surety, and that would be your actual bond as remedy for that other party in that contract, and then he would have access to that value as a transfer. When we deal with the beneficiary part on this private trust, the beneficiaries are all going to be persons. They're all going to be persons that you have the capacity to perform as. So as the man, you still get the beneficial use, but you do so as a person. And what that does is that makes the person, when we get to the personal trust, I'll explain it, but you use the person as the trustee that you're acting as. The person that you're acting as will be the trustee. If you're dealing with a private medical association, you have an ailment, and you go to this private medical association, and you present your information and everything, and something goes wrong, the person that's liable would be the trustee, and again, not yourself as the patient. And this is the thing where we have a problem with in court, is they're not accepting that. And that's because they're asserting the ownership of it through the trustee party as the government that gave you that birth certificate. The Treasury's the one that printed it up. They're the ones that created it. So they gave it to you as a beneficiary, as part of the public charitable trust. If you read the Post, it's two totally distinct different things. Your private trust is for private individuals, period. Anything that has to do with a public charitable trust always has to do with the public. Always. Always. So if you're incorporating your own private affairs as a person through what you distinguish as a private trust, by going to a public health facility, you're doing it wrong. You're now contracting with a public company, a public corporation, and you have to adjust your trust for that. You have to be able to make sure that the full disclosure is there, and that's something they're not going to want to deal with. If they're a public charitable trust program, and you're describing yourself as a private trust entity who doesn't benefit from the public charitable trust, then you can't benefit from the public charitable trust. You cannot serve two masters. Understand this. And this is why I say it's so important to get away from the presumed, assumed, implied, or supposed jurisdiction of the public charitable trust. Because once you're part of it and you use one part of it, the Social Security number in any fashion, what you're actually doing there is you're claiming to be an official employee of the government. And that's defined under Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 912. And then, of course, Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 911, you'll see where it's got penalties for claiming to be a U.S. citizen. See, a U.S. citizen is a civilly dead entity. No man can be a U.S. citizen. So read those two parts of the United States Code, Title 18, Section 911 and 912, and understand those. Those are for personal capacities, and you're not a person. You can only entrust certain properties and benefits to trustees to manage for beneficial persons. And again, that trustee is a title. It is a position held by a person. So when you do your ecclesiastical trust, you are the trustor. And as trustee, you are performing as a person and managing the use and interest in use of property for another beneficial person or for the benefit of another artificial corporate person. And since you're the trustor, you're the one that's executing these actions. You, as the man, get the benefit of all of that. And this is another important part of that social benefit program. Understand, people, if you're really trying to get down to the true self-governance, you have to understand that once you take upon the benefit of another, you're no longer self-governing because you've admitted one of many things, whether it be out of convenience or ignorance, cognitive dissonance, whatever it is, you've agreed that it is better off, it is a better benefit for you to assign, and that's why you signed as, so you've assigned somebody else certain responsibilities that cost you. So when you signed as a representative authority, the authorized representative of the official person employed by the United States government to receive that Social Security card, you in fact committed a crime if you are not an official government employee with intent to use it for those official purposes. So understand that's a large part of the fraud there. So again, the basic concept is you can do things a lot cheaper by yourself through your own governance, because when it comes down to it, they charge you every paycheck for Social Security, federal insurance, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, your IRS taxes. Got all kinds of people convinced they need tax identification numbers, federal identification numbers, employee identification numbers, all this other stuff, and you don't. All you have to do is learn how to operate privately, give up all that social benefit programs, and let them know on paper through the correct process. And this is how it's done. Pen is mightier than the sword. And once you get this all clarified with the right officials, U.S. Department of State, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he's a crooked motherfucker, but you have to let it be known. Because once it's filed and it's on the record in the registry, it's there. Bureau of Consular Affairs. He's the U.S. Consular, and Chuck Grassley outed him this previous year, just a couple months ago, in a video in front of the Judicial Committee, explaining how he had some kind of ties to the attorney firm that had something to do with the uranium scandal. And he himself, as United States consular, didn't have his foreign agent registration documentation filed. Yet somehow they let him go ahead and file it. But that does not mean that the things that he signed, understand this, the documentation that he signed, as signed, and was assigned to sign, but didn't have the authority to sign, are null and void. For the nullity of the signature not being supported by authority of the proper process. Did not have his anti-bribery statement, did not have his foreign documentation filled out. Therefore, his job was null and void until he did so. And many of those things I'm sure he signed were done in treasonous fashion. He's a crooked motherfucker. So, again, like I said, though, the process is a paper process, and we have to start writing this stuff down. We have to do it diligently. And again, like I said, just like the ecclesiastical trust, that's a private document you hold yourself. When it gets to the private trust, you have your private trust, and it's going to have all your other documents. It's going to have your durable power of attorney in fact. It's going to have your DBA or IBC. DBA, doing business as, the Minnesota Rule 220. That's here locally for the United States. Or you can do an IBC, which is International Business Corporation, through the Belize IBC. And it's specifically listed as Belize IBC. And Belize, you have to understand, is one of those various countries. It's a little teeny nation of its own, and it carries offshore accounts. Think about that. Offshore accounts. That's pretty much directly dealing with the IRS and the IMF. That's what those are. Those are more direct accounts to the IRS and IMF because they're not done through the central bank here at the Federal Reserve. And this is all stuff that people need to learn about when you're constructing these trusts. Learn about this stuff. Everybody has this thing about this American national too. Everybody's proud to be an American. You know, they think they elected a president. President Trump is the president. I urge you people to understand America is not the nation we need to be concerned about. When we're talking about a nation, we're talking about a formation of many states. Here, as America shows, it's got 50 states. But if you look at the real thing, what we're looking at is the organization of American states, and the president is not President Trump. It's a much bigger organization than we think, or many people think. And those of us that are learning about this are understanding why these trust setups are so valid and important. It's on a much grander scale. It's a much more important international levels. Like I was saying, the Belize IBC Corporation. You're not dealing with your local Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank of the United States of America. It's a larger, grander scale. And that's why they work with offshore accounts. Same thing with your hierarchies of law. And I've said this many times. Your Constitution speaks about the freedom of association in the First Amendment, and that relates directly to every man is worthy of his hire. Okay, and how that relates is that if you've got a big, huge township that has 4 blacksmiths, and a guy is skilled, he has the ability, and this again, you hear about unlimited powers of contract. This goes right in line with your a man is worthy of his hire. He has the ability to go out and talk to all 4 of those businesses that do blacksmithing and make up some kind of contract with them in order to establish a trust so that he can get compensation for his hire. And this is done through the international union labor laws. Understand, this is why, in my firm opinion, this is why Jimmy Hoffa has disappeared. He was on the tail of that, and he was ready to slay that dragon. He was ready to open the world up to the real view of the whole picture is the international union labor laws. Every man is worthy of his hire and has an unalienable and unlimited power of contract, and that is our own voice. We get to put our own value out there, and we need to start doing that by doing this paperwork correctly and placing our value in the right places, understanding how we carry that value, how we use that value, how we own that value, because no matter what anybody says, you don't own anything, you do. You own yourself and how you carry yourself and how you take care of your responsibilities and duties. That's what you own. You own that intangible stuff right here that tells you how to operate in all of this. And so we have to understand that and realize that, again, like I said, this is a much grander scale even than America. You know, everybody's concerned about America abusing them. Get with it on the grander scale, the international scale, and understand who you are and how important you really are as an individual. As an individual, you have the right and ability to create your own nation. That's what these trusts are all about. It's all about banking and operating appropriately in trust. Banks operate as a trust. And what do banks do? They manage your finances. What's your finances? In today's commercial world, it's your value, which they call profits. In relation to the way I live, it's my prosperity. Of course, that might change here. I might go back to a commercial system. I might use the commercial system in eventuality. I don't know yet. But I do know I have information that's valuable in setting it up. And this is how it's done. You can research everything I tell you and realize that this is it's so important in order to forward your own self-governance and showing these people that you are able to take care of yourself and you don't need to take upon their benefit. Okay? And then in regards to that all of this trust, my last video I made another short little video about the 10th Amendment. I want to talk again about that because I want you people to understand these trusts all work in circular motions. When I'm talking about this trust within a trust within a trust, you've got a trustor, and he's going to be the trustor of each trust. And so he's going to go from the ecclesiastical trust to the private trust to the personal trust. He's going to assign a trustee. And these trustees can also rotate within those trusts. They can all work as cogs within different wheels. And just like the little gear mechanisms that little boys used to play with when they were kids, and they put different gears on different places in the board and make them turn in different directions and make all kinds of patterns. That's what we're going to do with our persons. We're going to place them in certain spots so they have effects with other persons. So your bank in your private trust is going to be able to operate as a trust company. So it's going to be the trustor as my operation, as the real trustor, as the trustee for the persons in the private trust or in the personal trust. And so he's going to be placed as trustee. And again, I'm trustor of all the property for those personal trusts. And as trustee of the trust that owns that property, I get to transfer it to the trust for the personal use depending on who's using what. So I could have 10 cars and 15 people and transfer the use of the different cars however I want to do it. I can do the same thing if I own several different buildings and I wanted to do, say I want to do a bank, trust company, and a salvage corporation all in one building. Now there I've got, depending on how I want to run my trust corporation, I could have it for salvaging financial trusts, or I can have it built or set up to actually work as a salvage company, salvaging automobiles. Doing both. That way everything transacts right there, and I need less employees, whatever. Whatever's to your benefit. And this is how we have to take it upon ourselves to understand all the different mechanisms that are involved in doing these businesses. That's why it's so important to start educating our own selves so we can get back to educating our children in how to do this. When this country was formed or first started building, our forefathers knew all of this stuff, and they carried it from the old country here, and they taught their own children. They taught them how to farm. They taught them how to do relate to deal with animal husbandry, the growing of products, the manufacture of those various different products into different things that they need: butter, cheese, milk, paste, spaghetti sauce, hot sauce, whatever. You know, cooking, sewing, everything they learned is because they were taught by their own parents. And when it came to the law, it was the same thing. They passed on the law to their own children. We've gotten away from that because we instituted a public education system. And imagine when that took place. 1860. Thanks, Abraham Lincoln went to one room school. Yeah, not until he was an adult. We ended up with public education systems because of convenience, and started handing that responsibility over to somebody else as a government benefit, as a public benefit. Was it really a public benefit to give up our own knowledge? I don't think so. It's costing us. It's cost our previous generations, and it's going to keep costing our future generations until we fix it. So start educating yourselves. So anyway, back to this 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment itself is a trust, and like I said, it's a circular trust because the way it's worded, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. Okay, understand that. We're going to come back and talk to you about that. But not prohibited by it to the states, are reserved respectively to the states or the people. Okay, like I said the other night in my video, that's a trust. That's a trust, delegating powers. And it talks about those powers, and by reading it properly, we see the powers and how they're delegated. Okay, as people, the government is derived, we already know, for the benefit of the people. So we know the beneficiary is the people. So that means, in that very same statement, because only people can create government for the benefit of people, that says that the people are both the trustor and the beneficiary. Now, when we think about the delegated by the Constitution, who wrote the Constitution? The people. Okay? So if the powers were delegated, who's delegating those powers? We've already talked about a trustee is the one that has the powers to transfer property, transfer rights, transfer interests. And so when we talk about that instrument known as the Constitution, transferring, it's a document that transfers an idea, an intangible concept of justice. We're the ones that granted that. We are the trustors, we are the trustee, and we are the beneficiary. We play all parts depending on what part we want to play at what time, in according to how it's going to benefit us. And we do that in all trusts. Now, if that trust actually has you named, identifiable, and identified, you are part of that trust. Anything that doesn't is an implied or presumed or assumed or supposed, and can be rebutted with your own affirmation of your own trust, verbally or written. Or you can do it contractually. This is the nice part about the court cases I've been talking about. When we get these offers, instead of denying them, we accept them. When we accept them, we get to determine what position we accept them in. That's one of the conditions that you get to accept, that you get to put on the amendment. When you accept it and you want to amend it, you amend it by putting on the condition that you hold the capacity of superior party of interest in the matters, and therefore the court moves according to your judgment. It's your will. That defendant has your name. The deceased testator is needing your defense, is needing you to defend or to fend for them. So understand this stuff. So again, back to the 10th Amendment in the Constitution, it's a circular trust. It depends on what position you want to play according to what you know and how it's going to benefit you. So again, it's very important to learn this stuff about trusts. Every government operates on them. Every corporation operates on them. And you can operate independently. You do not have to. These Admiralty Maritime Courts, understand, they are Admiralty Maritime Courts. We all know that all courts are commercial. All crimes are commercial. Therefore, all the courts are commercial. And all commercial transactions, all commercial transfers are taxable. That's what tax is about, is the transfer of commerce. Transfer in commerce. So when these court cases come about, what it is they're probating the will. They're determining the authority of a will. And that will is supposed to name the executor, and it does. The Constitution. And in regards to the birth certificate, that's where the Constitution plays and tells you you are the executor. Okay? You're the superior party of interest, the paramount party of interest. So, and that's done through that name, of course. That's why they do it by the name. So now you know that you're the executor of the will that is named in the will, and nobody else can claim that. Joe Blow over here, Michelle Wagner, claiming that she has some kind of complaint against my deceased testator, or the deceased testator that I have the paramount interest in, because of a certain trust. See, and this is why I say it's important, again, so important to understand this trust stuff. Everything operates on trust, and it comes down to exactly your knowledge of it. Hosea 4, chapter 6, my people shall perish for they lack knowledge. And that's what we're doing. We're dying. We're dying out here. They're killing us because we don't know. Sending us off to jail to eat this poisoned food. Prisons for long terms over commercial acts. Start separating it and learn that the privacy part is totally different than the public. And if you're operating, again, you know, when it comes to that birth certificate, if you take that trust and you put it in your private trust and you start operating that person, you're now taking benefit. And you no longer have the right to that privacy. Just like these cops out here, public officials, clerks, judges, they're all in their public capacity. You have the right to film them because they're in their public capacity. All public acts and deeds shall be recorded. And those public acts and deeds that are being recorded are not being recorded for your private records. They're being recorded to be exposed to the public. So if you want your private affairs to remain private, you make your private documents and you always behave accordingly. Any documents that you have, and this is again right back to the International Union Labor Laws, the First Amendment, right to private association, freedom of association. You want to construct a private membership association so that anytime you have a problem, you deal with it intramurally instead of in the public. That way, if there's a problem, like I said earlier, I go to a private medical association and there's a problem, we have some kind of disagreement with the services, it's done through our own private membership association. If we turn around and go to these commercial courts, we're entering a public venue and we're taking upon a public benefit for decision of that dispute. Whereas, like it says, you know, go before your brother and make amends. So when there's some kind of contract breach, keep the contract and amend it so that it's no longer detrimental. But again, this is where it takes reasonability and logic in people to learn how to behave, how to do this stuff. Because if you try to be a private man and you don't know how to operate yourself, you don't know how to behave yourself and make good deals and be truthful and honest and accepting of reality sometimes it's nobody's fault and therefore both parties are detriment, and just keep on going. get over your loss, then, so be it. I hate seeing these suits filed against McDonald's for so many millions of dollars because some biddy at 79 years of age still doesn't know how to handle hot coffee. That was deemed to be dangerous. I thought all hot coffee was deemed to be dangerous. Some kid comes walking by, he's just tall enough to reach up and grab that hot pot of coffee and spill it all over him damn self. Doesn't matter if it's on warm or high, it's going to hurt him. It's dangerous. People that aren't able to accept the fact that they're 79 years old and it was their own goddamn fault for spilling coffee on their lap. Doesn't matter if it's cold or hot, it was their own damn fault. That's why we have all this bullshit in the courts. Everybody's so goddamn greedy and not willing to take responsibility for what's truly theirs. If you want to benefit from the government, go ahead and benefit from the government. But remember, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you a whole lot more than if you learn how to do it yourself. Save your future generations. Another thing I wanted to talk to everybody about real quick before we go. Identity. I was in a discussion earlier about identity. And when it comes down to identity, I want people to understand there's not one law anywhere in regards to requirement of any kind of identity. The only thing there is in regards to identity is a policy, and that's if you work for that corporation. Government doesn't require a policy. Corporation or an ID. Corporations require ID to show that you are part of their jurisdiction. So this driver's license, marriage license, any kind of license you have tells you what jurisdiction you're in. It'll say right on it, State of Iowa, marriage license, State of Iowa, driver license. Social Security Administration. You're under the jurisdiction of a federal program known as a Social Security Administration that has state agencies. When you start educating yourself on this stuff, you learn how they operate and what their duties are and everything. You understand how they're ripping you off. You understand that Title 18, U.S. Code Section 912, where when you signed up for Social Security, you don't understand that you're acting as a government official of some sort, because the Social Security Administration hasn't informed you, hasn't disclosed to you that they now have you classified as a Medicare qualified government employee. Now, when they do that, understand the government employee means that you're part of a militarized government. So now you fall under the jurisdiction of admiralty courts, and the government is a corporate entity that they're saying you're an employee of, so now you fall under the maritime courts. However, if you understand your capacity as an American national or as any kind of a national around the world, you use that to your advantage and clarify that, no, I'm a national, known as a civilian, or with the capacity of a civilian, or the status of a civilian in private capacity. And when we say that, what we're saying is that we hold our own jurisdiction as a national, and that another jurisdiction has us classified in a capacity or a status of a civilian in private capacity. And that other jurisdiction is the admiralty. That's the military. When we talk about civilian, we talk about military or non-military. Civilian is a non-military member. Now, when we talk about public civilian, we're talking about a corporate military member, because they're classifying him as a civilian that works for the government, but not in the military department. So they're actually falling falling in all three categories if they're intelligent enough to know how to use them at different times. And you do the same. You know, when you operate that public person, you're operating a militarized corporate person. So automatically you're in the public. If you're going to use your private persons in public forums with public entities, then you have to be very careful with your contracts with those people, with those persons. Make sure everything is disclosed and you know exactly every term and condition of that contract, because they'll slice you. They'll stab you. That's their purpose. Their purpose is to drain every ounce of blood out of you so they can survive, because they can't do it. They can't survive without you. So the more we restrict that public body by acting privately, the less it's able to regulate. Understand that stuff, folks. That's the importance of learning how to use that 10th Amendment trust. Learn how to regulate it yourself by restricting its public abilities. We need to learn how to act privately. And remember, people, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless. Love you.